All right, welcome to Book Club. I'm Dylan, here with the head of IT at the BBC, Keith. What's up, buddy?
Bernard checking in for duties. The name Bernard is a bad guy's name every time, right?
Bernard. The only other Bernard I can think about is Westworld.
He's a nerd too, right?
Yeah, he's a nerd for sure, but he's not a bad guy.
If you're cool, you go by Bernie. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. You change your name to Bertie, you know?
Yeah, Weekend at Bernie's. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, here at the BBC, we're breaking down some bestsellers, and this week we'll be discussing Wool, a Silo Saga by Hugh Howey. If you'd like to recommend a book for us to read or reach out to us about any past episodes, you can visit our website, buddybookclub.com, sign to our DMs on Twitter or Instagram, Buddy Book Club Podcast. You can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, so please download and subscribe. Keith, Wool's hitting the charts on Apple TV, Apple Plus. I don't even know what it's called anymore. It's Silo, technically.
I've had it on the list for a while. I'll talk about this in my hates a little bit, but I thought it was like a book from 1940. Just the name and the cover of the book were so dated that I was just like, I heard it's good, but you know, we can hold off on it.
Yeah, for sure. I got you. The funny thing is my brother-in-law, for some reason, and I have no idea where this came from, he's visiting right now, and at my father's house, he was like, I picked up this book that was sitting in the bookshelf. It's called Wool. He goes, it's so much like Silo. I was like, no, that is Silo. He's like, well, that makes a lot more sense, actually. I thought I was going crazy. But yeah, so now it's a hit show on Apple Plus, Apple TV. I don't know what it's called anymore. We'll probably do some epis on the show itself, but we just kind of want to talk about the book because I feel like it's been a minute since we've done some dystopian world type stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's jump into some stock up, stock down. Keith, what do you got stock up for Wool?
Stock up. The Anaconda Plan. No, D-Man, I'm not talking about your Friday night. I'm talking about Abe Lincoln's or the Union's famous Civil War tactic.
I think it was William Tecumseh Sherman's plan.
Winfield Scott is according to Wikipedia, but I always attribute it to Abraham Lincoln. He's the president at the time, so we'll give it to him. For those unfamiliar, basically the North's plan to beat a more motivated and better trained and better leadershiped army.
The North had the better trained, better leadership army.
No, the South did. South was more motivated and had better generals and everything like that.
Yeah, the leadership was much better for sure.
The whole point is like they basically surrounded the coast and then they cut them off down the middle of the Mississippi River. And they just basically sucked all the resources out. So they couldn't communicate, they couldn't do anything, which the revolt starts in this book is exactly what they should have done. We know where every single section of resources is. There's the food section, there's the power section, there's like they've everything just literally is like here.
It's siloed, if you will.
Yeah, ooh, nicely done. Yeah, all you have to do is basically control the food, control the power, and they come to you. Like, you don't need to storm up there and like fight them at their place. It doesn't make any sense. And I mean, the problem is they just don't have history books because I feel like, I don't know about you, but at least in high school for me, the things that they taught you about wars is one, resources are vital. Look at to the Civil War. Look at Russia. Anytime anyone's attacked Russia in the winter, Napoleon or Hitler, they get completely dominated because they run out of resources, they freeze. The second thing is hearts and minds. And that's what they should have been doing as well, is like just being like, hey, here's what's actually happening. Get more people on their side, join forces, increase the army size, and then you don't have to worry about anything. Then you just control everything, and you don't have to fight.
Would you say that clear eyes, full hearts can't lose? Is that what you're saying?
Don't bring Timmy Riggins up right now. The beat pad, I'll get the beat pad out if you bring Timmy Riggins up.
I mean, it's a great call. And also, you're 100% right on the Civil War stuff. I have a belly full of enchiladas. I just came back from a real early supper. But yes, the South was definitely more motivated for one, better trained and better led, just poorly equipped, really. Poorly equipped was one of the biggest issues. And if you want to learn more about that, and if we ever wanted to do some historical fiction, I would 1,000,000,000% do some Killer Angels and Gods and Generals. Either way, I love it. Anaconda Plan. Big fan. I do think that in the silo itself, though, the food is kind of throughout. They're not running food up from the down deep to the up top. Or like they're not running it from the mids to the up top and also to the down deep. Like the food is like every 10 levels, there's a greenhouse habitat or whatever the case is. But I do agree that in the down deep, they're controlling the generator, like everything that's powering the entire silo. So why can't they kind of hang back in their area? Yes, they don't have Sun Tzu, they don't have the Art of War sitting on a shelf to like read and get, get familiar with before this whole thing, and they didn't even anticipate for a rebellion. It does seem like they could have just been like, all right, we're going to start just like chopping off power. I do wonder though, if they put the rest of the silo in the dark, if the people in the mids would have then turned against them. IT would basically be like, oh, the down deep's shutting you guys off, like killing you, because legitimately people would be dying. The narrative would turn and everyone would be against the people in the down deep.
The whole thing is like, okay, we're just going to openly talk about this now. What are you going to do about it? You're going to kill like 100 of us? And then it comes the war, Like, yeah. I mean, then it's just like, all right, come down here and fight us then. See what happens.
That's one thing I didn't understand, whether they have megaphones or not. But I would just be like nonstop on the megaphone being like, whatever you guys think is real isn't real. We're talking to other silos out here. Mm-hmm. We know there's at least 18. There's probably 50 based on this. It seemed like that communication when they figured it out. When Walker like figures that out with Shirley and they're both on the same page, like, oh shit, there's like other silos out there. They can't communicate it to anyone. They're like, keep trying, but it's like, oh, we're in the middle of a fight. We can't do this. Like, no, this is the most important thing. Like, we need to spread the word because people need to know. It's like knowledge is the most important thing in that situation. And be like, we're all being lied to. Here's what we figured out. Join our side.
No, I agree.
But speaking about radio people and the down deep and whatnot, my first stock up is the trades. So we live in a white collar world, unfortunately, and everyone says, oh, go to college. Parents are like, go to college, learn about banking, go fuck people over. That's kind of the point of the world right now.
Go fuck people over.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
There's no love for the blue collar man anymore. There's no love for a little cell phone blue collar business. We're not here to make billions. We're just here to do some services, do some trades, help people out. It's good work. It's a good, honest living. That's all that matters. But people don't want a good, honest living. They're like, I want to be the next Steve Jobs. But no one wants to wear a black turtleneck. It looks stupid. I'd rather wear overalls. So the trades, though, look how multifaceted they are. Like Juliet, she's just a mechanic. But because she understands like how things work, mechanically.
She's an engineer, really.
Yeah, she really is, But the way that she understands how things work, she all of a sudden becomes sheriff. She's like, oh, I'm going to be way over my head. Next thing you know, she's figuring out police cases because she sees how it's all just a process. And she knows all of the different pieces to that process. She just has to put them together. Simple as that. And honestly, it's the same with the IT people, unfortunately, those terrible, terrible folks. And additionally, on top of that, just the trades in general, you always have something to fall back on. I have no discernible talents. I grew up in a white-collar world. If I got fired from my job, I'd have to find another dumb company that was going to hire me for some dumb job that doesn't make any sense. But if I was a plumber, I'd be able to go and fix people's homes,
it's a
fix some
pyramid
pipes.
Scheme. If we get fired, we just need to find another job.
Yeah, I just got to find another pyramid to jump in on. Jump in on the bottom rung and just be there. So
I hear you.
It's all about the trades, and that's why they win at the end. So go blue collar. Appreciate you. Fuck everyone else.
Yeah, you ever like fix something in your car by yourself without having someone else like help you with it?
Replace an air filter, like something really simple.
Updated my windshield wipers, and I was like, holy shit.
Updated my windshield wipers.
This must be like what a real man feels like, just like this is the easiest thing ever. And I'm like, man, this feels good.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly like that. What else do you have for stock up?
Stock up. Elevators?
Oh, come on now. We can't talk about elevators yet.
No, not yet. Well, I did feel like half this book is just people being like, God damn stairs. These stairs suck. I kind of relate to that. I get that. Stairs do suck. I know IT was basically limiting just any sort of communication, and elevators fell into that. I think the author says that at the end of the book as well. But I mean, you think they'd have a private elevator, right? Just to like zip up and down or something like that, where they could, you think they'd have that. The reason I relate to it, I also like pulled a muscle in my back recently, and so going up and down stairs has been like the fucking worst. And I have like 7 stairs, it's not like a lot of stairs. This is from, speaking of knowing trades and being a white collar pussy, I looked it up because it's like all down my leg, and it's like, yeah, it's from people
sciatica.
that just, yeah. Yeah, that's what I have. They're
Yeah.
like, it's from people that just are lazy, overweight,
Pregnant.
terrible abs, pieces of shit. Yeah, or pregnant. And I'm like, all right, so how do I get rid of this? They're like, don't do anything. Continue to be a lazy piece of shit.
Yeah, no, that's the funny thing about it.
It's the worst.
You should foam roll.
I relate to these 80-year-old woman that's going up and down the stairs for 4 days. It's
Yeah.
the same thing for me.
Foam roll those
Anywho.
glutes. That'll loosen up for you. But I had elevators, or the lack of elevators, in my hate. And like you said, the author did address it at the end in a Q&A. And it makes a lot of sense for this dystopian society. I mean, it's a great little vehicle, haha, but ability for people not to share information is the key. And if there is a semblance of a rebellion or something, like a couple people are chatting, it's so hard for them to spread the word. You know, you can't spread the word because if you pass off to a porter, it's going to get, IT's eyes on it. And the only other way is to actually lumber yourself up the stairs, go find someone else, tell them, it's just too difficult. Mm-hmm. So I do love it as like a way that the society would make sense. My only problem with it, everyone in the down deep is mechanically minded. They have the ability to come up with the idea of an elevator. Like, it's just such a simple thing. So they could be like, we could just easily build this, no problem. And at the end of the book, which I really liked, is the author addresses that question. And he basically says they can't do it because it wouldn't fit in with the society, which is a throwaway. But one of the other things he says, which I found interesting, was like the Porters Union wouldn't support it. And the Porters Union's like huge. And that makes a lot of sense to me. I was like, oh, cool. The idea that there is this Porters Union, which is a huge industry in the silo. They're not going to, if someone was like, we're going to build an elevator, the Porters Union would be totally against it.
Couldn't they just like control the elevators though? They could be like the elevator people.
Yeah, for sure. I see what you're saying. But there's a reason that we got rid of that too as a society. It was just stupid. Because then eventually they'll like play it out and be like, wait, we don't actually need to pay someone to push buttons.
If the elevator was the only mode of transportation, it'd be much more important than an elevator in one building.
I've been watching the show, so we'll talk about the show a different time. But they do have this throwaway line where they say that in the Pact, which is like the book of all the rules and laws of the society in the silo, in the Pact, it forbids basically mechanical, like elevators. It said
Gotcha.
things that move up and down throughout the
Escalators,
silo. Whatever.
Anything.
Anything that mechanical that moves up and down throughout the silo.
Is one floor more than, a floor is typically like 10 feet, I think, right? Or something like that. Do you think they're like 50 feet? Is that why it's so hard to get down that many flight of stairs?
Well, I'm sure there's like different levels. Like I'm sure in the down deep, like some of the levels are like much bigger considering the machinery they're using. I think it's probably somewhat uniform throughout, but I don't think they're like 10 feet each. Like it's not 150 foot,
I mean, we used to work on the 19th floor, right?
Yes.
What we were on? And we remember fire drills? Like, I'd be sweating by the end. It wouldn't take me 4 days if you multiplied that by 5, Yeah. It took us 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, and I did think about that at the beginning. And we'll talk about this more when we talk about the show itself, but it did help me visualize, because I've talked before about how I'm terrible at visualizing these things for some reason. It did help me visualize like the scope of this, because in my mind, when I was reading the book, I'm like, oh, okay, there's like, I don't know, a few hundred people in here, maybe 1,000 people in there. And it's like, when I was thinking about this spiral staircase, I was kind of thinking about like that James Bond level in GoldenEye when they're climbing up and down the silo, like the missile silo.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, just like a staircase that goes around the outside.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so. But it's more of a centralized staircase where every floor goes into, which makes a lot of sense naturally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's more than we'd expect. So my next stock up was germaphobes.
Okay. All right.
How do you feel about germs? Are you anti or are you pro germ?
I think it's all mental.
Go. What does that mean?
I think that if you think germs are a problem, then they'll be a problem. That's fact of the matter. Yeah.
Well, you tell that to the Native Americans. But
why are we bringing that into it? Jesus
well,
Christ.
Like 96% of them died because of germs, and you're going to tell me that germs were fake.
Those were viruses. It's a little different than germs.
Those are the same thing.
Are they? Viruses are different, kid.
All right, well, my whole point is, one, I'm pretty okay with germs. Mostly okay.
Whenever we see each other, you only allow me to fist bump you. That's like Howie Mandel. I know that.
Fist me. It's different. So
That's the clip.
the key about germaphobes is just don't drink from anyone else's canteen. Because if you were a germaphobe and someone was like grabbing for your canteen, you'd be like, no, I'm sorry. Like, this is just for me.
That was supposed to be like an intimate thing. That was like them kissing before they kissed.
They hadn't. Oh, okay. Because they hadn't swapped spit yet, right?
It was like in Seinfeld when Elaine shares the water bottle with the guy.
I haven't seen that episode.
Oh, you've definitely seen it. It's like the guy tries to kick out George out of the gym membership or out of the gym because he pisses in the shower.
Are you going to belittle me by saying I've definitely seen it when I definitely haven't seen it?
You told me you watch Seinfeld all the time. You've definitely seen the episode.
I've seen some episodes.
You haven't seen all the episodes of Seinfeld?
No.
This is an intervention right now. This is tough. Really?
I'm a curb guy through and through.
That's eye-opening, honestly.
The wife loves Seinfeld.
I mean, honestly, this validates Hitch for me. This really does.
No,
you haven't even watched all of Seinfeld? How do you do that? I don't understand. If you were like, I didn't really like watch the first 2 seasons. I've watched the other ones. I'd be like, all right, yeah, that's fair. The first 2 seasons are whatever. But just say like, I don't know that one. Come on, bro, grow up, would you?
All right, I'm really better. Upset. I'll do better. What can I say? I'll do better. You. That's all I can say. But don't drink from someone else's canteen because you're gonna die. It's really simple as that. You know?
All right, fair enough.
Also, if someone that's your enemy, like someone you don't get along with, let's say, as well as like, you know, the mayor and the deputy when they're talking to IT, every time they see Bernard, they've seen him like 3 times going up and down, and every time it's like a little tiff, like, we want Juliet to be sheriff, and he's like, definitely not Juliet, definitely not her, we don't even know who she is, she stole heat tape from us, that's all we know. And it's a fight every time, but then at the end he's like, let me fill up your canteens before you go any further, let me fill up your canteens. Yeah. Something's going on there. So if your enemy continues to offer you something every time you see them, it's probably going to kill you. Really simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. It's fair.
All right, let's go stock down. What do you got?
Stock down, looking to the future. I've had this before. I think I did the same stock down with the Mitch Rapp books. But yeah, I'm selling once again. Anytime a character seems to be thinking about like, you know what? Everything's going to be all right. That character's going to die. That's just fact of the matter. They're going to die within the next like 10 minutes of the book. Same thing happens in this. You have Holston going outside being like, oh, things are fine. Like, everything's great outside. And then we hit the real world, right? You know, he takes the mask off. He's dead. We have Mayor Johns walking up the steps. To your point, you just mentioned it. She's drinking out of the water. She's like, you know what? I'm going to probably hook up with this sheriff a little bit. Things are going to be good. I'm going to start being more involved. I'm going to start taking more walks.
Good thing I got some of that petroleum jelly from the down deep. I scooped it off one of them generators because I am about to get sloppy right now.
She's going up, you know, but he's going down.
No, he's going up.
Saying?
He's going up. Oh, I do see what you're saying.
Yeah. So, yeah, no. So that's, you think everything's going to be good? Dead. Yeah, she's dead right away. Yeah, obviously. So, yeah, so you just basically don't look to the future, like I've said before. I've said it again. And another stock, too, just in general with that, is that I think I've talked about this before, but if you're ugly, too, you're a piece of shit. The only person they describe as ugly is Bernard. They're like, and then Bernard walked in. Everyone else is gorgeous. Bernard's an ugly piece of shit. He's gross. And that was all they said about him. And I'm like, oh, so this guy's bad, I guess? But yeah, don't be ugly.
Yeah, well, I had a similar one to your first one, in that my first stock down was being the main character in a book.
Yeah.
Because normally, you know, you think that's great. Yeah, it's a great situation. So we got Holston, and we're like, oh, sweet. Like, this is the main character. It's, you know, the book starting off, he's the main character. Like, he's the sheriff of the silo. He's going to find some stuff out. This is cool. Great. He's dead. Oh, okay. Well, he's been talking to Mayor Johns the whole time. So she's the main character. Like, it's about the mayor. She's running this whole thing.
I also thought she'd be bad, too, which is nice.
It. Yeah, well,
nice
she
twist.
could be good main character, bad main character. Doesn't matter. She's a main character. Nope. She's dead. And then it's like, oh, okay, whatever. Who's Holston's number 2? Deputy Marnes. He was also in love with the mayor. Like, he's the main character. Got it. Nope, he's dead. And this is like we're a quarter of the way through the book, and legitimately every people we've been introduced to are dead. And like only then do we meet Juliet. And unfortunately, I had seen the cover, because it's like on like the cover of the book is the new TV show. So I knew who the main character was based on that. So I was like, okay, there's going to be a young woman who's the main character, which is unfortunate because I would have been a little bit more mind blown in the fact that we're a quarter of the way through the book and everyone that we've been introduced to and like learned about is dead. So don't be a main character in a book if you're if you're in a Hugh Howey book. If like you get cast for a Hugh Howey show and they're like you start reading the first 15 pages of the script and you're like, oh, it's all me. It's totally like Game of Thrones. It kind of threw me off guard, and honestly it was refreshing and super enjoyable because I was basically under the mentality that no one is safe. So when Juliet goes out, I was like, maybe she will just die. Who fucking knows? You know?
Yeah, for sure. What's good too is like if there's a sequel or there's like a big series, they're not going to kill off the main characters because then they just have to keep on adding new characters. But he's like, nah, I'm going to have 3 books and people are going to die throughout. So it's like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, he also addressed that in his questionnaire. And I guess we'll talk about this now. He, at the end of the audiobook, he has like, ask the author questions.
Which he wrote himself, which I really liked.
That's the part that I really liked, was that at the end, he's like, did you write these all yourself? And he's like, yes, I did. And not only did I like it because they were all like very base level questions. So he could have definitely thrown it out to the world, but instead he went anti-silo and basically said, I'm going to be full transparent here. I just made these up. Like, I didn't want to throw it out there to the world. I knew the questions that I wanted to answer, and I answered them.
Some would say it's similar to the Buddy Book Club's reader email questions, but probably not at all. Probably completely different.
It's exactly like that. Yeah. So I respected it. What else do you have for Stock Down?
Stock Down virtual reality. In this book, virtual reality is fucking awesome. They basically have the 8x2 strip they put over the mask, warps reality to make it look a million times better. Where is that for us? 20 years ago, probably at this point, I was in Faneuil Hall and they had virtual reality. We haven't improved on this yet? How have we not gotten, and this is really what I want. I mean, this would really solve also my back problem.
Not move ever again.
No, the opposite. I want a trackpad where you're playing Warzone and you're literally running miles in order to fight.
Oh,
You're jumping over things, you're sprinting, and it becomes the best, most athletic, best people. And so basically you'd have to like start the game. It's like, all right, you're going to run a mile to start. We're going to get your time for a mile. We're going to get your endurance, and you're going to be put in a slot with all these other people that run the same mile times. And then you're just going to improve over time if you want to become better, right? And it becomes more like an athletic game. And then you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm no longer a piece of shit that's getting a back injury from not doing anything. And then also, I'm having fun and exercising. Yes. Why can't we get that, dude?
Someone's like, wow, why are you so jacked? You're like, I've been playing Madden.
Yeah.
Like, what?
I've needed to be strong over the middle. I got to lay some people out, so...
Well, it's funny you said that because I remember going to Harvard Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts. One of the big things they had there was this VR shooter, which was... You put this giant headset on, like straight out of Blank Check. You clip in at your like harness, clip in, but it had a trackpad. So you were like trackpadding around.
Oh, really?
And then shooting. Yeah, it was like a whole thing. Oh, wow. Like you said, it was like 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. What the hell?
No, fuck. It was probably more than 20 years ago. It was like 25 years ago. I was like 10 years old because I loved Goldeneye at the time. So I was like, oh my God, this is Goldeneye of the future. This is going to be amazing.
I know.
And now all we have is like Mark Zuckerberg putting on some like cardboard glasses being like, I'm in virtual reality playing Fruit Ninja. It's like, no, this is not what I want. Speaking of video games, my next talk down is going outside. And definitely not something you want to do in this book. And if you have some sciatica, this is good for you because you could just stay inside. People are like, oh, do you want to go out? You're like in the silo. You're like, I can't, my back. They're like, you're like, it would require me to walk up like 4 flights of stairs. I just can't go outside. It's just not going to happen for me. They're like, all you have to say is, I want to go outside. And you're like, no. I definitely do not want to go outside. I can't even move. But do you remember, we're talking about video game aspect. Do you remember the Wii? When like in between games or whatever, it would say like, do you want to go outside? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Really?
A fascinating move for like a video game company that's like trying to suck you in to just play more video games. But in between different games, like if you're playing like Wii Sports or whatnot, it would say, do you want to put the controllers down and go outside? Pretty wild. So if you imagine if there's Wii in the silo and they're like, do you want to put the controllers down and go outside?
You have to bash that thing. Yeah,
absolutely not.
That's a test, though. That's how they get you out of there.
Yeah,
it's smart.
This is a rebel thing. Also related to this is cleaning. Just don't clean. Just, people that say cleaning's positive, negative. Just don't clean. And I'm a big cleaner myself, so if I'd have to really change my mentality.
What was the reason for cleaning? I feel like it should have been more vital to society. Because I remember when you described the book, they're like, they have to go out and clean otherwise. But it's otherwise like they just don't see that well. Like, who cares?
I also think there's another maybe hate around that in the sense of, okay, like Holston has to think, because every time someone goes out, they clean. Like they just, even though they say they're not going to clean.
Are they like solar panels? That would have made more sense, right? If they're just solar panels they're cleaning off in order to make sure they have energy. It's like, we're going to die if you don't go
you're going to kill everyone else. Because the idea is what Holston says, which is he's like, oh, I have to clean these cameras so that everyone else can see what I'm seeing. But he would know that hundreds of people have been out before him and they've all cleaned and he didn't see what they saw. It just doesn't make any sense that, because they said like even when Juliet decides not to clean, Bernard's like, oh my God, this is the biggest deal. Like this never happens. When it does, it's always a rebellion. And you don't think like one of those 100 criminals or whatever would just see this beautiful landscape and be like, fuck everyone back there. I'm just walking away.
I mean, that's what when Holston was like, I'm going to go clean now. I was like, no, bro. Like, what? Have some spite in your heart one time.
Yeah. So I agreed with you that it should be more of like the solar panels charge the whole silo. You have to go out there and clear them off.
And maybe they do. Maybe the future books, they're like, talk about the importance. They made it more sound like it was like, you're just doing it just as like a tradition rather than
it is. It's just so people can see through at the cafeteria while they're having their frosted flakes. They can see bullshit. this terrible landscape with all these dead bodies everywhere. Like that's exactly what they want to look at. What did you think about the like class structure and stuff? Did you think that was a fun way of bringing this whole story together? Because we had it with Brave New World had its own kind of class structure, and obviously Red Rising had its class structure. This was like a little bit quieter, I feel like. Yeah.
I didn't realize they were wearing different color shirts.
Different colored, like I figured them like overalls kind of thing, or like coveralls.
They that didn't seem to be a huge theme, whereas I feel like most class books or dystopians are like big on like, oh, they're not part of my group, This one was just like, I didn't even realize they had colors on until one point. They're like, oh yeah, they were wearing like the red shirt crew. I was
the grays
like,
and the blues or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't even realize. It wasn't really driven home, which I like, because I don't think this book is just like a class book. It was more of like a disinformation and how to keep society down. Yeah, which I think was a cooler take, because not all the books focus on that really.
Yeah, and in the show, there's not really colors, but there is like a class struggle. But I did think that was interesting as well. Just like the down deep was like kept low, even though they were like the good, blue collar workers. And then at the top was all the people that like held the information, but were also in the dark. They didn't even know what was going on. I thought the class stuff was well done in that it wasn't overt, like this is a clear class struggle. But as it progressed, you could see the divisions between those classes. Well, my next talk down is IT. Just in general, this can be a quick one. Like, fuck those guys, whether it be at work or anywhere else. Like, they think they know everything because they like to handle your computers. And yes, trust me, if I had an issue with my computer at work, who do I go to? I go to IT. So it makes a lot of sense that they would be kind of like the leaders in the silo. But at the same time, like, they're looking at my history on my phone. That's a work phone. Like, I don't want them seeing that shit. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
They're managing servers, but the servers are doing all the work.
They were a little uppity, honestly.
It'd be like, I'm doing all the work digging these holes, but you have an excavator. Oh, you know what I mean? It's like, they're talking about how like important it is and all this stuff. It's like, but you're not doing shit. That's like the fucking computer doing it. You're not doing it,
They're watching these, and they don't know a lot because you can't know too much. So they're just like making sure the servers run. And if the servers don't run, like they fix them. And they only know like the process to fix them. It's not like they can create. They can just manage.
Yeah, they're overrated.
Yeah, IT overrated in general. Help desks, no, we're out on the help desk. No, thank you. My last one, Big Y. Are you familiar with that grocery chain?
It sounds familiar. Yeah,
it's Connecticut and Massachusetts.
Okay.
Never been in one, but I know it's a thing.
Okay.
But it's a stock down for me. So actually, I'm not talking about the grocery chain here. I'm talking about the Big Y in general. The book Big Y, because when you read a book, you want to know who, what, where, when, how, why, right? Those are the things you want to learn. And this book, we never, and we know it's part of a series, so I guess that makes us feel a little bit better, but we never learn the big why of like why this is happening. We learn everything else, which is great and fulfilling. And I'm okay with it. Normally, if I didn't get the why, I would be like super frustrated. But in this case, I was down. I thought it was such a great way that all the other things were answered, but we still don't quite understand the big picture of why these silos are being created. And I've never wanted to just jump into another book, I think, more than this, because I need to know that. Like, I need to know the why aspect. But at the same time, I feel totally good after reading this book. I don't feel like I was left without answers being answered. I don't know how that made any sense to me. How did you feel about that?
I guess, what's the why that you're missing?
The why being, why are there 50 silos? Why did this in general get created? They said that like there was a country or whatever that saw that they were in the lead.
Aren't they in like Seattle?
The only reference they had was they saw Atlanta. So maybe they are. But they said basically it was a country who saw that they were currently at the top but on the decline, but wanted to hold their position. So they built all these silos and whatnot and potentially like nuclearly attacked the entire world. So they're the only ones left.
This also could be a dumb question or thought, but is it possible the silos were nuclear missile silos? That were like, they basically were housing that nuclear missile. They opened up, they shot them, and they just like shot them everywhere. And then they're like, and now we're going to live here.
They'd be way smaller than that. I mean, these silos are massive. They're like 10,000 people live in them. And you couldn't fire a nuclear missile out of this particular silo. It just wouldn't make any sense.
You can fire nuclear missiles out of a submarine.
Yeah, I'm saying you could probably fire it out of a piece of it, but it wouldn't be like the entire...
No, they're shooting 50 of them off.
You would just immediately be able to repurpose that and like build the stairwell in the center.
No, it was already built for that. They're like, here, we're going to build these 50 silos. Once we hit the armageddon button, they hit it, and the 50 bombs all fucking shoot off from the silos, and then everyone lives there for the rest of the time.
They're 150 stories deep. Like, there's no need for that for a nuclear missile silo.
I like the idea. The questions that I would like answer is like, how is this like poison everywhere? Is that radiation? Is that some sort of new thing? And then, yeah, I guess the why, do you think it's going to be answered in the future books?
I think so. I mean, we got pieces of it, but it's been so long, and who knows what these testings are that they're doing. Like we talked about before, like superhero origin story. I need to know the origin story of how this whole thing happened. Mm-hmm. But we didn't get that answer, and I still felt good about it. Did you feel good about reading the book? Like you were like, oh, that...
No, yeah, for sure. Even if it were just one book on its own, I think I'd be okay with it. If it were one book on its own, I think it would end a lot darker. I thought it was just going to be like, and then everyone dies and everything goes back to normal. And I was like, oh, because I kind of like those endings
reset,
for dystopians.
Like, it's like, oh, this is the next rebellion, and then we just reset with the same bullshit over and over again.
Like 1984 type ending. You hate them when you're reading it, but then you look back, you're like, all right, that was a cool message. Shit's just going to stay the same. Doesn't matter, I don't think it needed to be answered, but I'm excited to read the future ones.
You said you had a character, Walker?
Yeah, well, anyone named Walker? Walker's a badass name. So, yeah. Walker, Texas Ranger, obviously. But he's basically Q from James Bond or Alfred or one of these like technologically savvy types that can do everything and build everything. Love that. Fix the radio, saves Juliet. Just cool. I liked him a lot. And he's like, I'm not leaving this fucking place. Kind of like me in my room and with this fucking sciatica. But anyway, same difference. What about you?
I liked Walker too. I mean, Walker and Juliet, they were both great, but I think Walker was probably the best. I also found it funny that he never left his room. And in my mind, it was just like a garage kind of thing with like tools everywhere. I'm like, where does he shit? Does everyone just bring him his food? What does this man like actually look like? Is he massive, or is he just the scrawniest person ever? Just like malnourished because he just spends all of his time tinkering.
What is kind of funny too is throughout the book we're not really privy to the atmosphere or just in terms of like the senses that are going on. But when you meet Solo, she's like, oh, this dude is completely gross. Just smells like absolute shit everywhere. And Solo's immediate first thing, he's like, yeah, all I do is like walk around and destroy bathrooms.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what? I rewinded that. I was like, but did he just say what I think he just said? He's like, yeah, I just completely eviscerate this bathroom until I can't stand the smell and then I leave. I was like, wait, what? Loved it.
I mean, we really never talked about Silo 17, but you have no plumbing. You can just go level after level after level, just filling toilets. Like, what else would you do? Honestly, like, what else would you do? I guess you could kind of, like, hang over the railing and just, like, poop all the way down.
If you're doing, like, a garden, right, wouldn't you need the manure there?
Yeah, but I don't know if you'd need, like, a daily human waste.
Yeah, I'd convince myself that it needs it.
I actually kind of like the idea because you have the silo in the middle. Why aren't you just pooping over the railing or like figuring out?
You have a huge toilet below you. Yeah, good point.
Like figuring out
the
a
water in there.
toilet contraption.
That would suck though when they drain it out.
Well, Juliet goes down there. She's like, all right, we're going to run the generator. And he's like, yeah, it all sounds good. And she goes down. And by the time she gets to the lower levels, she's like, oh my God, there's 4 feet of shit here. What is happening? Yeah, Solo was interesting. Also interesting was the potential incest. Is that what was happening there?
I don't know.
Were they siblings? I thought they were all one family. Maybe like a pack of kids that were left after the rebellion or whatever the case was.
Yeah, they did say the baby had like 4 hands. So
no, they didn't say that.
I'm kidding.
No. That's not a thing, is it?
Yeah, if you have incest, it's more likely to have
4 hands. Get the fuck out of here. Fact check that. You're fact checking me about stuff. Fact check its hands.
It's much more likely to have deformities.
Also, if it had 4 hands, like, wouldn't that be better? Talk about like positive mutations. It's basically an X-Men.
Yeah, I guess that's like monkeys have disposable thumbs, right, on their feet. So that's 4 hands.
What do they have? Disposable thumbs?
What is it? What's the word for it?
Disposable. They got disposable thumbs.
Oh, what is the word what do we have for thumbs?
I have 2.
Imposable? What's the word?
Imposable.
Is that not a thing? What's it called?
You're Googling it, so you got it.
Opposable.
Opposable. They have disposables.
A thumb that can be placed opposite the finger of the same hand. Opposable thumbs. Oh, I've been saying that forever. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, now you know.
Fine.
We're like, hey guys, look at my disposable thumbs. People are like, you just take them off and throw them away? What happens?
Right, that's what makes us humans, is we have opposable thumbs, right?
Indeed. All right, what'd you love about Silo?
Love, great dystopian. There's like an adult version of Giver.
Yeah, Giver's actually a good analogy because I was thinking, because I had this on my Love Too dystopian novels, and I was thinking about like what else we had read and like where do we draw the line between sci-fi and dystopia. But I think The Giver is this is similar to that, but for adults.
You already mentioned it, but I really like that there's a lot of death because a lot of the YA books, the problem with those is there's a hero and you know that person's going to be the center of the attention throughout the book, and it's going to be a typical story arc with like them discovering that they're in some sort of not perfect society and then having to revolt against it and all this stuff that comes with it. Whereas this is just like, nope, this person's going to die, this main character's going to die, it's just this whole thing where you're like, oh geez, like I can't really trust that this one person's going to be the hero. It could be anyone, or they all could die.
Yeah, agreed.
And I just like the character switching in general. I thought different perspective, different characters, really like that.
Yeah, especially when they're in different places, and like getting Lucas's perspective was really fun because he's got it coming at this from a whole nother place than Juliet and her crew is. He had a really weird situation during that whole thing where he was like locked in the server room, and I thought that was fascinating too, like him getting all this stuff to like basically be Bernard's shadow. Bernard also stalked down Bernard, like being able to pick his shadow. Anytime he gives someone authority, they immediately turn on him. He was terrible at that. Like Billings, he was like, oh yeah, Billings, this is my guy. This is the guy coming up. No, he's going to be the guy that's going to kill you at the end. So yeah, no. And then Lucas totally turns on him. But I also loved the visor screen thing because they were kind of explaining it. And I feel like I was pretty good at like figuring some of the stuff out in this book. And when they were like, oh, like it's 2x8 or whatever the case is, like what would be 2x8 that they would need this for? And I was like, oh shit, that's the helmet screen. Like that's what's going on here, is they're just faking
We knew
it.
about that with Holston. I wish we almost didn't know that because that would have been a great reveal. If we just didn't hear from Holston again, we could have been like, oh, maybe he survived or maybe something happened with him. But like we knew from his experience that he had some visor going on there.
Yeah. Did you know that it was going to be Bernard in the suit at the end and not Lucas?
No, yeah,
I immediately thought, I was like, oh, I bet you they just, like, because you can't see into the visor, because she was saying, like, I can't see his face.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's probably Bernard in there. But then I had to do a double take, because I was like, fucking Hugh, I don't know. This guy always kills everyone.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, maybe he's just like, fuck Lucas.
My issue was like, okay, well, Bernard has admitted that he'll just kill people off, and there's only certain people that make sense for cleanings, right? Why would Lucas ever make sense for that? He's told you all the secrets. He's like too much information to do a cleaning. He's going to be the one, he's clearly going to revolt.
Yeah, it's clearly not going to clean. They were just going to burn him up and just say, like, oh, it was an accident. They burnt him up or something like that, I guess.
Yeah, it seems like he just like shoot him in the head in that little chamber there.
They already said, like, there's lots of killings outside of cleanings.
He said there was like 14 that year and there's been one cleaning, so he murdered 13 other people.
Yeah. Do you have any other loves?
You already just mentioned it quick, but the shadow. I really like the idea of an apprentice that's like, all right, this guy's going to follow you around. They're young, but they're going to learn. It's a cool idea. I wish we did more of that in high school and college and not just get thrown to the wild when we actually have to go in the workforce.
What would you have apprenticed for in high school?
I think one of the trades, I think, would have, even if you didn't want to go into the trades, I think that would have been a cool thing just to have under your belt.
Yeah.
These people are actually doing real work, and you can do it too, but also when you go into the real world, maybe you have an appreciation for this. You know, it's like if you've become a server or done any sort of service job, you start tipping more after that. You start like really appreciating those people because it's like, because you deal with so many shitty people, it's like you got to be extra nice because they have to deal with that all the time.
Yeah, it would have been great, and I know there are schools that are like this, but it would have been so great if there was just like a car at school that they would just like, someone would walk you around to be like, here's how to change tires, here's how to change air filters, change wiper blades, change your oil.
You do your taxes.
Yeah, exactly, stuff like that. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I would have shadowed all of those people if I had the opportunity. But what'd you hate?
I briefly touched on it, but the name and the cover, I just think Silo would have been a better name, which is probably why the show named that. Wool was I think Wool was mentioned one time in the book.
It was actually twice, and it was wild.
It's not a catchy name, and then the cover. Obviously, the cover is now replaced by the Amazon show, but like the original cover, when I remember looking it up, it says Wool in like black lettering, and it's a red cover with just like staircases around it, but it looks so old. It looks like an old graphic design. Like Dust and Shift look way better. Oh, this is like an old book.
Well, I think it's because Hugh Howey self-published it.
Oh, really? Oh,
so
okay,
he like
impressive.
Self-published it in stages. So he like did the first part as like a, I don't know,
kind of Andy Weir
novella,
essentially.
Yeah, a little bit. With the novella, it got popular. So then he like kept self-publishing these other little novellas like through the Amazon self-publishing system. So I didn't think he had like a big marketing
that's fair
group to like do that stuff. So I do agree with you there. And it's even funny because in the show, when Holston goes out, they like put a little wool in his pocket, and I'm like to Caroline, I'm like, that's why the book's name is Wool. And she's like, why? And I was like, because they put wool in his pocket. She's like, that's so stupid.
And that's all you'll hear about it ever again.
Yeah,
by the way.
I was like, yeah, don't. It's like in the book they only say it like once, so it really didn't make a lot of sense.
It should have been called Destroying Toilets.
I mean, I understand what he's coming from. It's a little thematic or something, symbolic.
Is it? What is it symbolic of?
If you got the wool, you're going out. It's a sacrifice to some degree.
Like the cleaning would have been a good name too.
Yeah. Okay. We like Silo better though.
Yeah. Yeah. Silo's a great name. Yeah.
Silo's. The only other hate, I guess, was the whole idea around like no asking questions and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you'll get sent out cleaning. This world is full of questions. Like, it's just asking for questions.
Mm-hmm.
It really, and I know they've been in the society for a while, but I find it hard that there wouldn't be super curious people. We can't ask any of these basic questions. Like, this has to be a problem. And I know that this exists in society, so I'm willing to suspend disbelief for this because, there are lots of totalitarian regimes where you're not allowed to do stuff and people live their daily lives and just put their blinders on and go about it. But it's just like, why are we here? No one's asking those questions. What's happening? I feel like there would have been more uprisings.
Well, you could think of the same way as like we're on Earth right now and we look into space. Like, we're in a big area. You're not looking at space and being like, oh my God, why are we trapped in this little tiny planet, right? Like that's the same way to mentality think of it. If you were just born in a silo, you wouldn't know there's a huge world. But people in space could be looking at it as being like, wow, imagine being in that tiny planet, never knowing there's
Yeah, but there's all rules about just asking normal questions, like very simple questions. of like why we can't have certain things, why we can't go here, why we can't go there, why can't I fall in love with somebody that I want to fall in love with, why can't I travel up multiple floors at once, like, well, it's like you ask that, you're gonna go outside, it's like, why, like that, none of that makes any sense to me.
Yeah, you sound like someone needs to go to cleaning, I'll be honest with you, but yeah.
I feel like there would just be more rebellious groups because they're like, oh, every 100 years or so, whatever, there's a rebellion.
Well, they're definitely right about like the whole sickness thing. Is once you get like a little bit of taste of like, oh, maybe things aren't as they are, then you start asking way more questions all of a sudden. But if you're just like, oh, everything seems checks out, and then you believe everything, then you're still just in your fairy tale. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I know that it exists in real life, so
yeah,
it's not really a super hate, but it was just kind of, I wanted like a rebel group that was within there that they found or something like that, some opposite of Spectre or something in the GoldenEye stuff. Like there's this secret, the Rebel Alliance is hiding out throughout all of the silo, just waiting or something.
Yeah.
That like mechanical tapped into once they started rebelling. Some leader came down and was like, we've been working on this for years.
Yeah, yeah. My last hate was just the extended drowning and suffocating outside scenes. I mean, obviously they were well written. They were just very uncomfortable to read or listen to. Just the brutal, like, I feel like I might be suffocating, right? Like outside, or I'm about to drown. Like those two, it was basically a horror film for those two scenes. The Silo 18.
Wasn't it 17?
Or 17, whatever. Yeah, whatever the one that they weren't in. That whole place was a horror film.
Oh,
it's always
God,
dark.
yes.
Lights are like flashing. They hear sounds all over the place. I felt very uncomfortable. Obviously, it was great, but I was just uncomfortable the whole time.
Yeah, and the fact that it's massive, and they're wondering like, oh, like why are these doors open that I feel like I already closed? There could definitely be other people that have been living there without you knowing it for that long. So
yeah, for sure.
I don't think it's addressed in this series, unfortunately, but I don't think they make it that far. But I'm really excited to see that on the screen. Keith, would you recommend it to our listeners?
I was a big fan. I think it's going to be slotted in at number 8 for me, book-wise, my top 10.
Oh, wow. It's a top 10 breaker.
Yeah, I think so. It's going to knock Dark Matter off the list, but I think there's a type of book that's right up my alley. I mean, it really is just my bread and butter right here, so not surprising that it's going to end up in the top 10.
Yeah, I wonder.
What about you?
I honestly don't know what my top 10 is. Like, I don't know what the back half of it is, but it could slide in there. It was good. It was very good. I enjoyed it. I'm excited about more of it. I'm excited about the series. It in itself was just like super fun. But yes, I would definitely recommend it. I thought it was great. What was it, like 15 hours, the audiobook? Yeah, it's perfect. That's right in my wheelhouse. I would definitely recommend it, bottom line. All right, what do we got coming up next?
The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. This one we got recommended by a BBC listener. It was, I think it's supposed to, like the comparison was like Red Rising meet Game of Thrones or something crazy like that. So we're like, all right, that sounds too good to be true. So we'll see if that's the case. Have you started it yet?
I have. Have you?
No. Good?
Top 10 for sure.
Really?
Locked in.
Whoa.
Locked in.
Whoa, big.
I'm only like, I don't know.
Man.
I'm hoping so. I'm super jazzed. I think this would make a phenomenal TV series. And I'm only...
You're 2 hours in. You're like, yep.
Yeah.
Write it up.
Yeah,
All right,
I'm locked in. So yeah, we'll come at you with Rage of Dragons. We might have another one in between. We'll see. If you haven't got it yet, go get it. Enjoy it. And we'll catch you next time.
Alrighty. I like it.
Yep. All right, Keith, you enjoy yourself. Love you, brother.
Yeah, you too.
Bye now.